Welcome. Did you know Shadowdark can't do a long campaign? It might be good for a one-shot, a dungeon crawl, perhaps at a convention, but it's not a campaign game. How many of you have seen that criticism or heard it? I was actually at a convention recently and someone said that to me. And I thought to myself, well, one, what's that even mean? Like, where does that sentiment come from? But more importantly, it did get me thinking about classic Dungeons and Dragons and what is a campaign? Like, what is the structure of the iconic D&D campaign as handed to us back in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons days and Basic Expert? And how does Shadowdark actually measure up to that ideal? This has been interesting. I will say Shadowdark does have some problems. We'll cover them. But more importantly, I had a huge epiphany thinking through this question, a mental breakthrough of sorts. This is going to sound dramatic, but the prison of my mind dissolved a little bit, and I realized Shadowdark actually subverts some of my long-held beliefs about campaigning. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And we will circle back to the Shadowdark isn't a campaign game crowd and see what those folks might be on about. Anyway, welcome. That's going to be our topic today here at Lich House, the structure of a campaign. Welcome to my channel. I'm John. This is a place I like to talk about Shadowdark and old school Dungeons and Dragons. So as we turn our attention to the campaign, I think a good question to start with is, what is a campaign anyway? So looking at the old school definitions, Moldvay Basic, the red book from 1980, 1981 says it's just very simply, it's a series of adventures that just happen to take place in the same fantasy world. The AD&D definition is really similar, except we are introduced to the ultra cool purple prose word of Gary Gygax, the milieu. And if you get nothing else out of this video, you can go to your home game next time and say, welcome to my milieu, right? Gary's Dungeons and Dragons books, the DMG and the Player's Handbook, they're full of these big words like milieu. I'm going to try not to say that the whole video. But again, he says, hey, a campaign is just a series of episodic adventures in the same milieu. Now, in 5th edition, we get a slightly different definition. We start hearing about, well, it's an ongoing story, and the players, with the referee's help, they create an exciting story. So things have shifted, and then Shadowdark tries to split the difference. It's a series of related stories that form a campaign. We're going to come back to the basic and AD&D definitions, though, because I think those are really the heart of OSR gameplay. So file that away. There's something there. In those books, though, the advice we get as referees has our campaigns all following a consistent arc, if you will. So what is the iconic campaign arc? Let's take a look. So I know this is a little busy, but the idea was at low level, the party starts someplace small, like a village or a hamlet. Maybe it's Hamlet or the Keep on the Borderlands or someplace similar, and they're going to go to the local dungeon, the Moat House or the Caves of Chaos or the Cave of the Unknown. Maybe go out, mug some goblins. And their first few levels of play are going to be in this local proving ground style dungeon, right, to get some preliminary experience. Then once they get to the mid-levels, now they're able to go out into the wilds, and they're going to encounter all those iconic dangerous monsters in D&D lore, the dragons and the giants. And then at some point late in the campaign, you start approaching the end game. The players are 9th level. We used to call that name level. That's the point where you can start clearing a territory, raising an outpost, a stronghold, or a castle for yourself. Now, you're still adventuring. This is the kind of stuff that happens in between adventures. And in BX, that arc went from level 1 to 14. BECME, the successor to Basic Expert, which is Basic Expert, Companion Master, Immortal would expand it all the way up to level 36. And AD&D, this arc would be levels 1 through 20. Although, if I'm being honest, AD&D really only supported heavily play up until maybe levels 10 to 14 or thereabouts. Now, why was this the recommended campaign arc for people back in the 70s and 80s? I think a big part of it is just the simplicity of getting started. Role-playing games were such a new thing in the 70s and 80s. And let's be honest, there is a learning curve. It's easier to get started as a referee if you just have to worry about a single village and a single proving ground style dungeon, the testing grounds for new players and new characters. And people totally new to role-playing games also, they need time to learn. Sending people out into the wilds where things are, they're open-ended, and two, the monsters are a lot more dangerous. Those old-time game designers just thought that this was better left to the mid-levels. The other wrinkle I'll say here is that Gary specifically in AD&D felt that proving ground or testing ground dungeon just outside of the hometown, it should be multi-level. The idea is that as the players go from level 1, 2 to 3, they should be able to go deeper in the same dungeon. And if this is really a focal point for your campaign, you can just keep adding levels on, right? So those early 1970s campaigns frequently featured a mega dungeon. And while the popularity of those kind of go up and down in the OSR, it's definitely something we've gotten away from. So the next question, how does Shadowdark measure up to the iconic arc? Pretty well, actually. So if all you have is the big black book, the Shadowdark book, you can absolutely do dungeon crawling and be hometown heroes and handle the local trouble phase, as well as move into the wilds in the mid-levels and do hex crawls and dungeon explorations out in the wilds or encountering layers and caves and things like that. The only thing that's not really in the Shadowdark core is that end game where you might build castles and settle a stronghold, settle a territory, build a stronghold. Let's put a pin in that though. We will be back. And also the Shadowdark arc is levels 1 through 10 instead of like levels 1 through 14 or 1 through 20. Now, as I was contemplating this is where I had my epiphany. This is where a light bulb went off in my head, and I started to, what I'll say is this, my mental prison started to dissolve, because on one level, Shadowdark completely subverts this particular way of thinking about your campaign. Before I say how, let me ask a question. How many viewers have watched the Glass Cannon Network or Glass Cannon podcast? So these guys, the Glass Cannon, it's an actual play group. It's not dedicated to Shadowdark. It looks to me like they've been around for years. I'm not much of a actual play viewer myself, but I don't know, two months, maybe 3 months ago, they announced that they were going to start doing Shadowdark as their next game. They're all New York-based voice actors. The referee is excellent. And they're running this campaign. They're actually running it in this Curse Scroll number 1, the Gloaming, where they took a bunch of level 1 characters, put them in one of the starting bases, but all of the plot hooks and adventure ideas that they're finding are far away. And so the characters are going like long distances across the wilderness, hex crawling. There is no proving ground or testing ground or easy dungeon right outside the home base, so the players can get some experience and some easy victories. Like, they're just like, get out there, noob, and good luck surviving. And the kind of encounters that they're facing are just rolled on the wilderness encounter table. They could clearly be overwhelming to level 1 characters. If they didn't have a wizard with sleep, there would be multiple TPKs already. They've encountered a werewolf den and had to avoid the werewolf. They've discovered a dragon's lair. Like, they're just out there constantly on the edge of survival. And there's something thrilling and terrifying about that. And I think the answer was in front of me all along, because I've been reading these cursed scrolls, and I think when I've thought about running a campaign in them, I've always fallen back into that mental model of saying, oh, yeah, no, the Gloaming looks great, or the Jurim Desert looks great. And if I did this, this would be my home base, and then I would have to come up with a starter dungeon, because you don't go exploring into the wilds till you get to levels 3 or 4. And I don't know why I didn't make the connection that, at least in Shadowdark, the way these are presented, and I think the way people are receiving how to run the Cursed Scrolls as campaigns is without that preconceived notion of what a campaign arc is. And so they're sending their first level parties out into the wilds, and it's like a survival horror game, like right from level 1. And I saw that, and I said, I need to do that too. Challenge accepted. I don't know when I'll get to it. Hopefully the 2 campaigns I'm running, that sometime in 2026 they'll wrap up. But now that my brain is out of the prison, I definitely want to run a Shadowdark hex crawl that has first level characters just going out there without a safety net, and let's see what happens. So this is how I was saying Shadowdark on one level subverts the classic campaign arc. It's very interesting to me. Okay, I know this is a little bit of a tangent. I do have a viewer question. Let me know in the comments how many of you, when you picked up one of the Cursed Scrolls, just said, yeah, we're going to hex crawl and have a wilderness-based campaign right from level 1. I'd love to hear about it. The next topic I wanted to talk about while we're talking about classic campaign structures is, what else did we need back in the day to flesh out the traditional D&D or AD&D campaign structure? So beyond the basics, you would need things like weather, rules for weather, mechanics for mounts. You'd have horses or camels if you're in the desert, wagons. Ships were really popular. People would travel by water. I just spent time looking at the Isle of Dread because I'm probably going to run that coming up soon. So you need rules for ships and nautical combat and things like that. Both BX and AD&D cover travel by air. They're assuming players might get flying carpets or griffins or hippogriffs or things like that. And then in the end game, when the players get to high level, magic users and clerics and stuff, they're going to want to know how to make magic items. You've built a castle. You've stocked it with men-at-arms. Someone out there doesn't like the fact that you've moved into the neighborhood. You've got to be ready for war too. And so many of these end games required mass combat. That was built right into BECME. AD&D, you needed battle system. This is something I talked about in a recent video as well. I'll probably link it to the end. This means war. Let's talk about how Shadowdark measures up. And I will say, this is where I started to notice some problems with Shadowdark's approach. Here's how Shadowdark tackles the question of these expanded rules that you need for some of these campaign elements. You can see the coverage is pretty good. Weather came out in Cursed Scroll 4 along with expanded hex crawl rules. Mounts are in Cursed Scroll 2. Cursed Scroll 3 brings us ships. So far, Shadowdark hasn't touched on aerial travel. Cursed Scroll 6, which I just talked about last week, deepens downtime quite a bit, including rules for magical research. And while it hasn't been in a Cursed Scroll yet, there are playtest materials from the Western Reaches on the Shadowdark Discord that cover bastions and warbands, the things that I talk about in the This Means War video. The problem is this: if you're a Shadowdark person and you've got the core rules, the big black book, and you're not aware of the Cursed Scrolls, or you're not a completionist or a fanatic like me, you may not realize that these different gameplay elements are sort of scattered across these different supplements. So it's a little fragmented. I predict by next summer, like after the Western Reaches Kickstarter is going to be in place and we all get the books, that when we think of like the Shadowdark, the complete game, it's probably going to be showing up to the game table with your core book and then either the Western Reaches player's book or the Western Reaches GM's book, wherever all these rules live, because I think that they're going to be a really important part of ongoing gaming or ongoing campaigns, I'd rather say. Now, if you step back and look at this a little bit, the next question is, all right, well, what haven't I talked about? What's missing? The biggest area for me is the multiverse, the extra planar or the other planar kind of stuff. So right in core Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, there's a lot of coverage back in the Player's Handbook and DMG on other planes of existence. BX didn't really touch on it until BECME and the Companion and Master set had it. AD&D went so far as to have its own rule book called the Manual of the Planes that really went into a lot of detail on extraplanar stuff. And so far for Shadowdark, what we get in the big black book is Planar Shift as a high-level spell that both clerics and wizards get access to. So there's nothing stopping you as a referee of putting in your own extraplanar location. There is a way in the game for the players to get there and to get back. But I actually predict probably after the Western Reaches, there's a lot to publish, a lot of books to ship. The Arcane Library, they're going to need to take a break. They get back from vacation and they're thinking to themselves, all right, now what about Cursed Scroll 7 or Cursed Scroll 8 or Cursed Scroll 9? I think we'll probably see extraplanar stuff then. If you think about the Western Reaches and the kind of vibe it has, or they have, to me, it comes across as elements of sort of folklore horror with some Celtic vibes and some Norse vibes. So maybe we could see extraplanar locations or realms like the Celtic realm of the dead, or a fairy realm with Titania and dark fae, or maybe something with the Norse pantheon. Anyway, I think the sky's the limit, and one of the things that's actually nice about how modular Shadowdark is that they can just keep introducing cursed scrolls. I'm still hoping for a pirate-themed cursed scroll at some point. Underwater realms is something that could be open. I think Cursed Scroll 5 will cover underground realms quite a bit too. So I clearly am of the opinion that we have everything we need to run like the classic D&D campaign arc, from local trouble all the way up to establishing your own stronghold or domain in Shadowdark. But I still think there's a reason that it can't do a campaign crowd like what they're fixated on. So we'll answer that question. Before we do, though, if you enjoy my content, if you like this channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps. It encourages me to keep going. We're closing in on 2,500 subscribers, which is awesome. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos and enjoys my content. So I think what the doubts are really about, it goes back to that early definition of what a campaign is, as you see it in Tom Moldvay, as you see it in Gary Gygax's writings, that a campaign is an episodic series of stories that just happen to take place in the same world. There's no expectation about an overarching narrative plot, and there's no expectation that characters will survive. And that kind of like the modern expectation is that you build a character at level 1, you can invest like a huge amount of material and backstory, and that your character, they might not be immortal, but they've got a degree of plot immunity or survivability that's going to let them make it start to finish through a campaign, because the campaign is not about the world. The campaign is about the character. And the old school mindset, and Shadowdark kind of follows in the footsteps of the OSR, is no, the campaign is about exploring a world, stories emergent, but there's no guarantee of survival. Let me know what you think. It's always dangerous to project into the heads of other people and try to get what they're thinking. But that's what I imagine is probably going on with those thoughts. That, Shadowdark can't do campaigns. And actually, for that matter, I think that the same folks would probably say, well, you can't run a campaign in Old School Essentials or Swords and Wizardry or Labyrinth Lord or BX or AD&D either, for the same reasons, which is patently false because millions of gamers run old school games. Folks, thanks for being here. I really enjoyed this one, mainly because thinking about these campaign structures is when I had that epiphany moment and realized I can change my approach to how I do wilderness campaigns. I'll put a link below to that Glass Cannon network. I think they're worth checking out. I don't agree with everything they do, so maybe I'll talk about their games at some point. We talked about combat and mass combat and strongholds a little bit here. I'll link to that video. This Means War. The YouTube algorithm thinks you should watch this other video. And as for me, I am obsessed with Shadowdark cities. I read The City of Mass recently. I did a review last week. I think my next video is going to come back and talk more about how we build cities in Shadowdark. All right, everyone, enjoy your holidays. See you on the other side.